Planning and zoning meeting for April 19th, 2017 will now come to order. Please stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have roll call, please?
Chairman Williams.
Here.
Vice Chairman Shavir. Secretary Chambers.
Here.
Dr. Faison. Member Baker. Member Ritchie.
Here.
Member Bobick.
Here.
School Board Member Hare.
Here.
And we have quorum. Next is approval of minutes for April 5th, 2017.
I move that we approve the minutes from April the 5th.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must first fill out the oath card on the agenda item and sign the oath card contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to procedures adopted in Resolution 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first, those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on an item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine the witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents you desire the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. Staff has the only item been properly advertised?
Yes.
And has anybody on this board discussed or visited the site? Discussed with anybody in the public about the item coming before you or visited the site?
Nope.
No? Okay. With that, we will go to first item, please.
Okay, the first item on the agenda begins on page 10 of your packet, and this is for conditional use permit number 1-2017 to allow a school at 1881 Knox-McCrae Drive in the Community Commercial Zoning District. And I will give a brief overview and then try to answer any questions that you have. The request includes 4 properties at 1881 Knox-McCrae Drive. In total, the properties are cover 14.2 acres and have frontage on both Knox-McCrae Drive and Barn Avenue. The property is currently a retail plaza with an approximately 75,000 square foot building and associated parking and stormwater retention areas. The largest unit within the plaza was previously a public supermarket. The complex was originally constructed in 1986 according to the Brevard County property appraiser. The applicant is proposing to renovate the existing building on the property in order to establish a charter school. Based on the application provided with the request, at full build-out there will be approximately 56 employees and 492 students attending the facility. The included concept plan indicates the site will remain in its current configuration with the exception of the addition of a playground area for students, a designated pickup and drop-off area for the students, and additional landscaping consistent with the city's land development regulations. The applicant has not illustrated any additions to the existing building, with the exception of that small area to accommodate the pickup and drop-off area for students, which there again is reflected in the concept plan. The proposed pickup and drop-off route will be accessed via Barna Avenue and will exit onto Knox-McCrae Drive, and I can explain that based on the concept plan before I finish here. I just want to go over a couple other things. As far as parking is concerned, the site currently has in excess of 300 parking spaces. The proposed school will only require approximately 62 of those spaces. Therefore, there's adequate parking. There was no concerns from staff in regards to that. Utilities, the only comment that the Water Resources Department made was that once the change in ownership is finalized, that they will require an updated private lift station agreement because the property does utilize a private lift station, but they did not express any concerns with the existing infrastructure on the property. The fire department did not object to this, and moving forward, the code does establish some specific criteria for schools. Staff did not find any inconsistencies with the proposed facility and and what the code requires. And so staff is recommending approval with 4 conditions. Those 4 conditions are that a landscape plan shall be submitted consistent with Chapter 35, Article 2 of the Land Development Regulations, and soon to be Chapter 30, Article 3, Improvements, Division 10, Landscaping of Ordinance Number 27-2016 with an effective date of April 23rd, 2017. The second condition is that a traffic study shall be submitted for review. Any on-site or off-site changes necessitated by the accepted traffic study shall be completed prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the school use within the existing building. The CUP that this request shall apply to the entirety of the existing building. The applicant is proposing to initially occupy some of the existing units and to expand into the remainder of the existing units in the future. Expansion into these existing units shall not require an additional CUP. However, we did go on to state that if additions to the building are proposed, a CUP for those proposed expansions shall be required. And then any modifications to existing site lighting will require submittal and approval of the appropriate permits and lighting plan. And so the concept plan is actually on page 18 of your packet. And on there, on the concept plan, you will see along Barna Avenue is where the proposed pickup route, people will enter in from Barna Avenue. The pickup route will then go behind the existing building over to, there's a red more or less square, and it's marked the proposed student drop off and pickup. So that is where the students would be picked up and dropped off each day. And then the pickup route goes out and exits onto Knox McCrae Drive. The proposed playground area is just to the west of the existing facility, and it's kind of illustrated with a green square just to the west of that existing facility, and it does meet the minimum 50-foot buffer requirement that is required by the code. And so with that, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them, and the applicant is also here as well.
Okay. Before we do that, let's open up to the public. Do we have cards on this item?
Yes, Charlene Montford.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Charlene Montford. I am the founder and board chair for Legacy Academy Charter School. With me tonight are my vice chair, Napoleon Carroll, the secretary treasurer, Pastor Deborah Davis, my civil engineer, who I could not have done without, and other supporters, my community liaison member, Liz Mkhitaryan. We were approved in 2015 by Brevard Public Schools to open a kindergarten through 6th grade charter school in the Titusville Mims area, North Brevard. We looked very aggressively during 2015 and 2016 to find an adequate site for our charter school. We have been blessed with finding what we feel is the ideal location for Legacy Academy Charter School on Knox McCrae, the old Publix, the Royal Oaks Plaza. We're coming to you tonight to ask that you approve our request for a rezoning and that it moves forward to the City Council for approval. The concept for Legacy Academy is a curriculum built on a STEAM focus: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We will open in year 1 with 261 students and grow by year 4 to 492 students. The location that we have chosen is ideal for our growth and expansion. Realizing that this is April and school opens in August, we have been blessed to find a temporary location for our school. We're working with American Charter Development, one of the top funders of charter schools in the United States of America. They have charter schools all over the U.S., including lots of charter schools here in Florida, They are working in conjunction with us, like my house. I own my house with Chase Mortgage. So Legacy Academy will own the Royal Oaks Plaza with American Charter Development as our developer. We are in the process of selecting a contractor and an architect to move forward with the renovations as quickly as possible. However, things being the way they can sometimes be, we are prepared with a partnership with First United Methodist Church to use their preschool as our temporary location in the event our construction runs past July 31st. The pastor of First United is here, as well as one of the members, Lisa, I cannot pronounce your last name, Mosier. With that said, we are eager and ready to serve children in our area, and we're hoping for a favorable approval from this body as well as City Council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Shirley?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This charter school, it's going to draw students just from Titusville or the surrounding area?
From North Brevard, Mims, LaGrange,
Oh, it's from, okay.
North Brevard. Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Okay. Can you go back to, at what point were you looking at opening?
In August 10th of this
okay.
year.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Mr. Bobick, you had a question?
Yes.
Turn on your mic.
Church-sponsored school, correct?
It is a charter school is a public school. It's a non-traditional public school, but we're funded through the same resources that the traditional public schools in Brevard County are funded.
Okay. I have one other question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea what the financial impact on the area is going to be?
On the area schools or the area?
The schools and area. How
we
many-
don't. We plan to open with 261 students, and from my conversations with officials at Brevard Public Schools, we don't anticipate any drain on the traditional elementary schools here in the Titusville or Mims area. We will pull from a little, probably from each school. There is a large homeschool population in North Brevard. We have a lot of interest from parents who are currently homeschooling their children, as well as parents who are interested in our particular curriculum, which is a STEAM-focused curriculum. As far as an economic impact, we anticipate a positive economic impact to the area for several reasons. We will draw teachers and staff, so we will eventually employ over, close to 60 people, which is an economic positive for the community. In that we're buying the entire plaza, it is our intent to lease up the entire plaza and therefore also generate a positive economic impact in our community.
So the liquor store won't reopen?
No, sir. No liquor. I don't know if Florida has the cannabis law, but no cannabis, no liquor, none of the above.
It's 500 feet, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
500 feet. The only other, I find it interesting, and this is just an off comment, but Titusville is one of the few places in the state where they've closed elementary schools. And so that's one of the things that I'm thinking about, is that we have closed other schools.
You are correct. In fact, two schools. In 2012, Riverview was closed by the district, and in 2013, Southlake was closed by the district. The past couple of years, and I'm sure you're aware, the Titusville area is growing quickly. There is a lot of industry coming to the area, a lot of new families coming to the area. a lot of interest in aerospace and other types of companies that are drawing positive, positive energy and middle income and high paying wages to our area. So the student population is growing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next card, please.
Rodney Honeycutt.
Good evening. Rodney Honeycutt, 3700 South Washington Avenue in Titusville. And mostly I'm just going to kind of address the technical issues that we understand them and are abiding by them. But certainly I have to say that even though I was extremely happy when we got a new Publix on 50, I was disappointed that we had another strip center that was vacant. And so I'm thankful that Ms. Munford was able to consider this for her site, and maybe we won't have a vacant site here anymore. But going down some of the list of the items, the ingress and egress for the site will not be changing any of those. They'll still be the same ones on Knox McRae and Barna. Screening and buffering. If you're familiar with the site, and you may not notice it, on the south side of the site, there's an existing wall that runs the entire length of the property, so there won't be any buffering there. On the west side of the property, that property is zoned residential in nature, and so there will be some type of buffer for that area required. Right now, mostly it's wooded on that west side, so there'll be a combination of ways to make sure it's completely buffered. Landscaping. Over the years, the plaza was improved with landscaping, and the parking islands, I don't know if you remember or not, some of the trees are actually nicer than the ones in the Walmart parking lot. Have been there for years because they never paid any attention to them. But certainly on this, some of the landscape islands will probably have to be landscaped, and we understand that, and as we agreed to, we will meet the code in that area. We've provided a student drop-off and pickup area that we think is adequate, and it's on the kind of the west side of the facility, so that allows a longer pickup area. We also understand that we will be providing a traffic study to the city, and the traffic study is by an expert that may have more input into that, so there may be some changes, but we think we're adequate there. We'll agree to change to whatever the traffic study recommends. We are proposing a small playground area on the west side as it's shown on the plan, and that will be buffered as required, and at least 50 feet from the adjacent property. And lastly, we understand and agree to the recommendations and conditions from staff. As most of them, we went over the landscaping, the traffic study, and the other issues. And so I think we're meeting everything we're required to for the conditional use permit. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Do you have questions? Okay. I have a few questions. On the retention ponds, are those going to be dry retention, or are those existing?
Those are existing ponds adequate for the site now, and there will not be any new impervious areas.
But are they dry or are they wet?
I'm pretty sure the one on the southwest corner is wet and fenced in, and the other one I think may be dry.
Okay. And I'm asking that because the playground is there. There was code regulations on playgrounds in the years past, and
Good comment.
okay. And then, what improvements are you actually looking at doing for the landscaping? I know that this is kind of a different beast because it's not remodeled. It's not. It's more of like repurpose, and I don't think the code really covers as much in repurpose. But because it was a mall with a lot of parking, the entire front on this is concrete, or not concrete, but pavement.
Pavement.
And what is your intent to meet the intent of the code on landscaping for that?
We plan to have some landscaping, and typically in those things, we negotiate a plan with the city that's acceptable to them, that's affordable by us when you have a reuse, and so we certainly plan to do that.
Yeah, so this would be considered redevelopment as far as the code is concerned, and when properties are redeveloped, either change of use going from a retail plaza to a school or a building is demolished and rebuilt, the code offers some flexibility. And basically what happens is that if, for instance, someone isn't able to meet the required depth of the code, of the landscape buffer, for instance, if it has to be 20 feet and they only have 10 feet, typically it's negotiated that they can make up the difference in that landscaping material somewhere else on site, so that the same amount of material is provided, it just may not be in that exact same location.
Well, the reason why I'm going there is because obviously it has the look and feel of a shopping center, and I think we need the look and feel of a school. Part of that is with landscaping codes, and so part of what I was trying to touch on too is how are we treating this as if it was a redevelopment and then all the codes kick in, or if it's a redevelopment where it doesn't kick in, but because I didn't think they would, and I think that would be a bit harsh to try to enforce. It's a betterment for the city for this to be used rather than sit empty. So I'm trying to understand how much do they have to change. At the same time, I think it does need to change to fit the area, to fit the look of a school. And
Sure. And I can elaborate on that a little bit. Applying the redevelopment standards in the code are very common throughout the city. And with that, more or less, you have to meet.
What's percentages, I thought, of...
It's not necessarily percentages. You have to meet the code. However, if, for instance, you can deviate from the code, it gives the administrator the flexibility to approve small deviations from the code without requiring a variance. So to go back and use the previous example I was using, for instance, any new development, like the new Publix that replaced this facility, they had to have a 20-foot deep landscape buffer along any right-of-way. This existing facility where the school is proposed, that was built probably to either a 10-foot standard or maybe slightly less than that. And so basically what they will do is we won't require them to get a variance for that 20-foot since they only have 10, but they'll just be required to fit as much landscaping as is feasible in that 10-foot strip. And so it offers flexibility so that we're not requiring them to tear out large portions of their parking lot to add that extra 10 feet of landscape area. So it does offer that flexibility and doesn't overly burden these type of redevelopment projects.
Okay. On the center, the green space that you have in the parking lot, you're just kind of giving us an idea of how many parking spaces, how much room. I think you said 64?
62, I believe.
62 spaces. That was what that's about?
Yeah,
No
I think
changes
it
there?
said I think the code had some language in the CUP that you needed to designate the spaces required, and so that's why I designated the area.
Okay. On the entrances, you guys talked about having 2, but in reality, there is 4 to this lot.
Yes, there's 2
So
on each street.
Are you keeping access to all 4?
Yes.
Okay.
There's 2 out parcels on this property that could be used.
Right. That's what the language was used, was 2, and I'm thinking that you would keep them open. Now, on the, because this is, you still have the medical plaza there, does there have to be, and I guess this is for them more, because this is one property, how are you going to work with the parking requirements between the 2 properties?
The existing parking layout is not proposed to change, and so
No, but I mean, the parking, the way that the ownership looks like it is owned by the applicants.
Are you referring to the out parcel where the medical
It's
building is?
on the out parcel where the medical center is. It used to be Royal Oaks Medical Center.
Uh-huh.
So, although it's not their problem, I know that they park on their property. So it looks like they have a sliver of land. Well, hold on, yeah. Okay, that looks like that is separated, but yeah, it is separated completely. And they have parking around the, just around the edge. That wouldn't be enough parking for that medical plaza.
Correct. If I have not verified this, but it's very common in these kind of retail centers that there are cross-access and parking easements in place that say that, you know, the medical plaza has access to their property through the
would it
neighboring
be-
property.
This is a different scenario because you're dealing, although it's not a public school, it essentially is a public school.
But the easements run with the land, not with the owner.
But
I would say that the agreements are between the owners of the property.
And that's where I'm
And it would be
going.
appropriate for the new owner of the school to enter into an agreement with the medical plaza if staff finds that adequate parking is not sufficient on the out parcel and
Right.
that there was previously a shared parking agreement to utilize the shared parking that it is in the master lot where the school is.
and that's where I'm going, is that there should be a new parking agreement or something, or let them decide
I'd
what they're going to
recommend that
do.
staff review the current parking on the out parcel before conditioning it, and if staff determines that additional parking is required for the out parcel, that a new shared parking agreement be entered into by the current owners.
Okay. And then the other part, I don't want to go on and on about this, is that your pickup route was on the backside of the building. And so I was just curious of why you chose the backside rather than the front side.
We're looking for a long route, and it makes a good area on that corner to bring people out. And so people that are there waiting to pick up their kids will, you know, be not blocking traffic or anything.
I'm just, this is minor, it just doesn't, I've been on the backside of that building, it's just not aesthetically pleasing. But it just, I understand for a functional part, yes, you can back up traffic a lot easier there, but although that's nothing that we would ever make a decision on, so I know that. Let's see, what else? And the last question I have is about the last building near the playground. Now, what you have here is I have 74,928 square feet minus that building, that last end building. Is that something different that's going to be utilized there on your map?
The last building being part of the same structure, just
It used to be like a dollar store, or it used to be right.
it was
It was an Eckerd's.
Was it? Okay, well, okay.
the last use might have been the dollar store on that end, I think.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they have plans for that right now.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying that I see everything else greened out, and I mean,
It should be green. Oh, no, there's,
It's open space.
the place between the
Is that
road and
open?
the green is
Is
actually
that-
open space.
oh, I
Yeah,
thought that
that'll
was part of
probably
the
be-
building.
That'll probably have landscaping.
Never mind. Okay,
Yep.
okay. So that was all my questions. Are there any other questions of Mr. Honeycutt?
Will you be refurbishing the back of the building to make it more aesthetically pleasing for pickup and drop-off?
That's a question that Ms. Munford would have to answer.
The answer is yes, and of course, all of our, oh, I have to come forward.
Mike?
Sorry. Yes, ma'am. We do, but we're going to phase in all of that, but over time, we intend to make improvements to the entire 14-acre site.
What about fencing? I mean, what about protection for the children as far as enclosing the property?
We have
with
talked
fencing?
about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just the fencing that's going to be around the property to make sure the children are safe and secure.
And those are in our plans as well. Particularly, I heard the question about the retention area, and we're going to, we're already talking with our developer about ensuring that there are absolutely no safety or issues, because that's part of our marketing strategy to the parents as well. But we have considered and still considering fencing our area, separate and apart, maybe even from some of the retail.
It's not that we really have any say over that, just from people coming in from the outside, I mean, it's just a strange world in some ways, and just think about the children.
And to
That's a
address
personal
your comments, Mr. Williams, I don't have my glasses on. We're going to make it as student and children friendly, as possible. Over time, as with everything, money is always the biggest impediment that everyone faces. But over time, we're going to appeal to not only our parents, but we're in the process of trying to garner as much support, financial support, as we can possibly garner to make it as school and child friendly as possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Microphone? Do you have a question?
No, I was just going to make a comment.
Okay, microphone?
Yep.
Oh.
There you go.
No, I was going to make a comment that I think one of the reasons for the back lot parking is so they can stack cars and not interfere with the traffic on Knox McCrae or Barno. As you know, I live down by Apollo, and there's a quarter-mile backup twice a day going into that school.
Yep. Been there. Okay, I think we're good. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Honeycutt?
No. Mr. Chambers, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
All right, do we have any other cards on this?
No, sir.
All right, so we'll close this meeting to the public, bring it back for the board. I actually had a few questions of staff. One of them was calculations, although it really doesn't have to do with CP. I'd like to know about the calculations for the school board. If they take 400 and something students for a charter school, are those calculations included? Because right now we're at a shortfall again, where we have too many students versus not enough space. And then if you rewind back to Senate Bill 360, and they put the requirements, and then they put, I know they repealed some of that, but it's basically pay as you go, and the developers need to pay. Are these calculations factored in to those with school? Or do they keep them separate so the calculations for the school is constant? Well,
Are you referring to impact fees?
it's impact fees, but it's also it's capacity. It's built on capacity, and do they factor in these capacity subtractions?
I honestly cannot answer that. I'm not sure how the Brevard County School Board handles the amount of children that go to. Yeah, I can contact Mr. Lemon with
I mean,
school
that'd
board.
be good. I mean, that's like I said, I know it has nothing to do with the CUP, but if they're basically taking up 400 something students, that is a school. I mean, it is a school, obviously, but I mean.
He's worried about being almost at capacity right now in
Right,
in
and that's.
our area, but
Microphone, please. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Mr. Lindman is aware of the housing that's planned for the south area, and the schools in the south area, including Jackson, are almost at capacity already. So I don't think they'll worry about a charter school.
It's not that they worry about it. I'm saying that I think that the development community should also benefit from this because they're taking up that capacity. They're picking up some of that slack. I would hate to see people have to pay more than they should. And that's my point. So maybe that's something you can look into, although it's a separate item. So then my next question is that although is this, because you're sponsored by the school board, is it considered a public school?
It is.
Okay.
A charter
So-
school is a public school, yes.
Okay, and that's what I thought. So, my question for staff is, why did we not pursue maybe changing this to public? I think the zonings for schools are public, aren't they?
Some of the schools are located in public zoning. However, there are multiple other zoning districts that allow schools. There would be nothing wrong with changing the zoning. However, that would be the city wouldn't initiate that. It would be
I
the
know.
responsibility
I'm
of
just
the
saying,
applicant.
it seems to me that might have been an alternate route that would have been more of a sure shot than a CUP, potentially. But I don't know. But it doesn't matter now because we have this before us. But what I was trying to also ascertain was whether charter schools should be rather zoned rather than conditional use for future. Well, we're going to see more and more charter schools. We do see, I remember seeing a few schools come in before us, and they come in under conditional uses, and I'm questioning whether that they should be under just zonings.
Sure, that's something that can be looked at.
Okay. All right, so I have no other questions. I think I got everything answered for what I need. Are there any other questions of staff on this? Okay, with that, is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve CUP 1/2017 with the stipulations made by the planning department.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call on this?
Member Ritchie,
Yes.
Secretary Chambers,
Yes.
Member Bobick,
Yes.
Chairman Williams.
Yes. Okay, first hurdle done.
Thank you.
I really look forward to your success, and I want to say thank you for considering Titusville, and thank you for considering using up these buildings and redoing them.
I think it'll be a win-win for everyone, the
Yep.
community, the children. I'm excited.
Thank you. Okay, last item. And also, this is more of an information item, so there's nothing that we're going to take action on. It's just information that he's presenting to us.
That is correct. Staff understands that it's sometimes difficult for the members to attend, webinars, things like that throughout the day. So as we are, doing our own research, reading, planning publications, that sort of thing, if we see topics that we think would be beneficial for the commission, our goal is to continue to bring these items forward to you. We're going to try to do that on evenings where the agenda is light, as we know that everyone's time is always pressed. So the presentation tonight, we found an interesting presentation that was given by the Chicago Metropolitan Area Planning Association, I believe is what it is. Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, which is abbreviated CMAP. And it was a presentation that focused on how to address parking issues through various different methods. Some deal with providing, or basically there are two different ways you can do either pricing strategies or non-pricing strategies. And so there's pros and cons to both. And different municipalities have implemented each with varying levels of success. And there is no one right or wrong way necessarily to handle parking. And it has always been an issue, and I think it always probably will be an issue for the foreseeable future. So we try to keep ourselves aware of what other jurisdictions are doing to address these issues, and we would just like to keep the commission up to date as well as much as we can. So the first item that I wanted to talk about were the non-pricing strategies. And so these would be methods of addressing parking issues without necessarily charging for parking, whether that be in a parking garage, a paid parking lot, metered parking, anything like that. So there are ways to do it without charging. Some municipalities have found that reducing or eliminating parking minimums, as I'm sure you're aware in our code right now, dependent upon the use that you're proposing, you have to have a certain number of parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of building, for instance. And so some places have done away with that. That's always an interesting method to choose, and it doesn't work everywhere. Another strategy would be employer incentives, and this is sometimes municipalities working with large employers to incentivize either carpooling or something like that, and working out ways to just reduce the number of parking spaces that are needed because employees, rather than each person driving themselves to work, they carpool or van share or something like that to reduce the amount of parking that is necessary. Another item would be shared centralized parking. This could be conglomerations between, or agreements between cities and businesses or employers that there may be one centralized lot or structure provided for multiple office buildings, something like that, so that everyone can share one lot rather than spreading out parking over large areas and taking up large areas of land as well. Of course, improved biking and walking infrastructure, encouraging people to just get out of their car more and walk or bike if that's a possibility. That's one strategy that. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, we were on the board here. Something came before us that they were thinking about building a parking structure downtown, and I don't know what happened. This seems like it's almost running along the same almost. But whatever happened to that big parking structure we were supposed to build for people to park in and come downtown and shop?
At this time, there are no formalized plans for a parking structure downtown. There have been discussions about a parking structure, but at this time, there's nothing formalized moving towards that.
Oh.
So it may come back in the future, but at this point, there's nothing formal in discussion regarding a parking structure.
Okay.
But that could change in the future. And so also narrowed streets with back-end angled parking has been a recent kind of adopted strategy for a lot of places. And the graphic up there that you see is more or less how that works. It's essentially like angled parking. However, rather than a car nosing into a space, you actually pull forward of a space like you would when you parallel park and then back in at a diagonal angle. These have been successful for numerous reasons. One, it's much easier as a driver to see oncoming traffic and pedestrians, and also from a pedestrian standpoint, specifically cyclists, it's much easier to make eye contact with the driver as you're approaching a vehicle when you can see that driver and make that eye contact. And so it allows for on-street parking, but it also increases safety. And there's a lot of municipalities that are implementing these. Typically, they start a block or two at a time just to let people get used to it. But everything that we have seen, it has been successful, and it's been successful at reducing the number of incidents between vehicles and also vehicles and pedestrians. So that's something that's somewhat a newly implemented strategy in a lot of places, but it does seem to be successful thus far. And so the next item that we saw, what you'll see here is, so you have a conventional development pattern there. So you have, and this is a typical suburban development pattern, you have a school separated from shopping, separated from areas where people do recreation, separated from work. And so the graphics that you see here that are popping up, those are the parking lots all in front of them. And then the yellow lines here that you're seeing are all of the different basically vehicular movements that are required for day-to-day activities. And so you typically drive from, to the school, then you drive to work, then you may go back to school, pick up your children, go shopping, go over and drop them off for some after-school practice, something like that. And then what you see at the end is all of those T's in the middle of the road are all of the different turning movements that are required as you drive back and forth between those different land uses. And those turning movements are really what typically cause backups on roadways, because that means you're not moving, you're stationary in the roadway or in a turn lane, and that's what causes backups. And so that's why so many people, the next example that you'll see here in a mixed use kind of park once district is, you still have all those different uses. You have areas for recreation, for schools, for shopping, and for work. However, a person only needs to drive in once and maybe park in a garage or in a lot And then the green dotted lines that you see there are people, you can park your car and walk to all of those different uses that you see. And so even throughout the day, you mainly walk, and then at the end of the day, you get back in your car and, you know, drive back to your house. Oops. And so what you see there is it cuts down dramatically on the amount of turning movements and typically allows traffic to move more freely on the roadways because there aren't the same number of those turning movements. And so as you see the results in the lower right-hand corner there of that slide, you end up needing about half the parking because everything is very close together and you can walk to, you know, 2, 3, 4 different things rather than having to park everywhere you go. It takes up roughly half of the land area. It cuts down dramatically. You end up with only a quarter of the arterial trips that you would typically, and then you have about a sixth of the arterial turning movements, and it also cuts down on the vehicle miles traveled. And so that's whenever you hear planners advocating for mixed-use districts, this is certainly a part of it. It requires a lot less parking, less street infrastructure, and it gets people out and moving more so than in their vehicle. As I said, there are varying ways to incentivize various parking strategies. The next one is pricing strategies. So this would be, like I said, to either install pay-to-park lots, parking structures that you have to pay to park in, potentially on-street paid parking, things like that. And so based on research that CMAP had done, pay-to-park spaces are the most effective way to reduce parking congestion, and typically those kind of pay-to-park on-street spaces should only be used where you need high turnovers. So obviously people that work need to have long-term parking, and so maybe you don't charge for that. But right in front of businesses or restaurants, things like that, where you want that turnover so that more people can come and frequent those businesses, that may be where someone would focus that kind of paid parking infrastructure. The next bullet is probably one of the most important. The spaces are not intended and should not be used to generate revenue, but only to create vacancies in those targeted high demand areas. And like I said, that's for those areas where you want people to come and go frequently throughout the day, people shopping, eating, that sort of thing, where they don't park and their car remains on the street for 8 hours per se. It goes into, you know, the only price that should be charged would be the lowest price necessary that creates that necessary availability. And that also creates the opportunity for drivers that are willing to pay the money to park in that high demand area and pay for that spot will be able to find a spot quickly, whereas others will park further away from those high demand areas and walk. So while someone who is going to a restaurant to eat may pay the on-street parking price, the person that's in there working for an entire shift probably would park somewhere else a little further away, maybe for free or maybe at a much reduced rate, and then walk to their employment. And one thing that CMAP was very insistent about was to give the affected residents and businesses a say in how the revenue will be used. So it's not just, you know, city collected money and then it goes into whatever the, you know, city staff thinks is best. Is to give people a say in what they would like to see out of that revenue that comes from those parking spaces. And something else that I just wanted to hit on quickly were the construction costs. A lot of times people are hesitant to do a parking structure, and it's very obvious why. Typically, a surface lot per space, you range anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 per space. So that would include, you know, preparing the land, doing the asphalt, all of that is about $4,000 to $10,000 a space for a surface lot. Once you go into the above ground structures, the price goes up dramatically, anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000 per space. And then the automated garages, which are somewhat becoming more popular, but still are not seen in a lot of places, are anywhere between $40,000 to $70,000 per space. And the automated garages typically have sensors under each parking space. It'll tell you on what level, how many spaces there are in each level, if the garage is full, and so it creates a very information-rich environment, but it does add a significant cost to a parking structure. And then pretty much far and away the most expensive, which typically you don't see a lot in Florida, mainly because of the soil conditions, are underground spaces, and those are from anywhere between $40,000 to $100,000 a space. And so those are typically only used in extremely dense urban areas where land costs are very high. And so we just wanted to give you kind of a quick overview. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to write them down and kind of do some more research for everyone and get back to you. But that's just kind of a parking 101, if you want to look at it that way, as far as different ways that parking can be managed, either through pricing or non-pricing strategies, and how the other places have applied those principles.
Okay, Member Ritchie?
Are there any plans right now for any structures, or, I mean, is there anything that they're looking at this point?
There's nothing formal. There is no formal plans for a parking structure. Discussions have been had, I think, at the CRA regarding, and some of the recently adopted economic development plan referenced some parking structures, but no plans have been prepared yet. There has been no, no packet put together to reach out for bids or anything like that. So there, like I said, there have been discussions, but nothing formal.
I guess another big question is where? Where are you going to where are you going to add additional parking?
Of course, that's and getting the location correct is very crucial as well, because if you're going to make the investment in the infrastructure, you want to make sure you put it in the right location.
I had no idea that was going to be that pricey.
And like I said, that's kind of it's a wide range for those above ground structures, but even everything I've ever heard is those are pretty much true to form, anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000, $35,000.
Well, even the surface lot, the $4,000 to $10,000 just for a surface lot, that's just.
It costs a lot of money to level ground out and get it graded and prepared properly, and stormwater retention. It all adds up very quickly.
Wow. Okay.
Again, as Trevor mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, it's for informational purposes. It's not related to any direction that staff is taking or pursuing regarding parking.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add real quick. Years ago, we talked about doing Julia Street was repaved, and at that time, the intent was to put a parking garage there. Now I'm sure that's changed now that they've taken a portion of, it's more than changed just a little bit, a lot, but they added the building there. That really changes everything. But that was the original intent, and I recall they just needed to budget the money for it. There was a lot of talk about smart streets. There was talk about, but it was, you got to put your money where your mouth is. And so we have discussed this for years about making Julia Street that, but it is very expensive. There are other priorities right now. One of them is potentially a new city hall. At that time, that may be something that can be discussed as well, because you're going to have an issue when the new city hall is built. Where are you going to park? So I think that has come up before.
Correct. And part of it, too, is not just coming up with the funding for a parking garage. That's certainly a big hurdle to get over. But part of it, too, is doing the groundwork as far as conducting a parking analysis. Do we really have a shortage? Where do we have a shortage? How is the existing parking downtown actually used? It may be that there is a lot of parking in one area that isn't used, and there may be not enough parking that's very highly used in other areas. Yeah. So part of it, too, will be not just deciding that, yes, we want one. It'll be, how do we really need one? How big should it be, and all of that. So the discussions have been had, but there will be quite a bit of groundwork that has to be done before.
I know you got to go through the process, but anybody that's spent any time downtown, it is, I hope you don't spend a lot of time doing research on it, but anybody will tell you one of the biggest problems downtown is parking. I used to avoid downtown because I couldn't find a spot. Now it seems that some of the strategies have been to use distance of walking as a method to calculate parking. And I'm a firm believer that you should be able to park fairly closely. I would hate to have to walk a quarter of a mile. Should not be acceptable, and I think that's roughly, it's somewhere in there, right? Is where your A level is.
The standard walk radius that typically is applied is a quarter-mile radius, which is equivalent to a 5-minute walk.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that I'm a firm believer that shopping. I'm not going to walk a quarter of a mile to go buy a pair of jeans. I'm not going to walk a quarter. I'm lazy. I mean, I'm a healthy person. But when it comes to shopping, I don't want to shop, and I want to go in and out. And so I hate to say it, I'm a lazy shopper. And
Bless your heart.
so, I know that that's the newer calculation that you guys use, but I do believe we need parking. I think that, the CRA has been in existence for a lot of years, and that is its Achilles heel, is that there isn't a lot of parking. That's one of them, of redevelopment. But
And I should clarify that when I said that the standard is the quarter-mile walk radius, that actually our code requires parking typically for any new development, but a standard planning principle whenever you're talking about more urban areas is the quarter-mile walk radius, the 5-minute walk radius. And so our code differs from that somewhat, but that is the planning standard in general.
So, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, I think it's good. I obviously, I hope that we don't go to Cocoa Beach style of meters like, oh yeah, I hate parking at Cocoa Beach. But I never have changed, so. But, if that is the direction that we end up going in the future, there's a reason. So.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, that's not what this presentation was about at all. It's just that, there again, going along with any study that would be done to maybe necessitate a parking structure or anything like that, always before metered parking or paid parking on street is installed, a study should be conducted to really see if you are going to put it in, don't put in too much, really specify the areas that really only need it. And so our staff is adamant about that don't do it without your proper research. And so that would be our take on it if the city does decide to go in that direction.
Okay. Mr. Chambers?
Somewhere in the thousands of presentations I've got at home on the shelf, I know there's, and I'm going to find it. We went through this thing, and I think the city was talking about building a parking structure downtown. And they were trying to determine whether to go underground so far or keep it on top. I know we had this discussion. I thought at some time or other that's what they had in mind in the future somewhere. I didn't think about it anymore after that presentation, but I was almost sure this is what they were thinking about, is building a parking structure. Because they asked, should we charge people so much money for parking in a stall, monthly, or if the people that were coming downtown to work, if they pay for that out of their pay or whatever. The whole thing, I know it's. I'm going to find it. Now, I thought it was a good idea at the time, because you only got one part of the downtown blocked off, and there's a parking structure. And there's no more parking all over the place, all in that one structure. And that sounds pretty good to me. You don't have to, like lazy people like our chairman here, don't come out of the parking structure, go to the store. Me, I'm one of them too, because I don't like shopping. I'm just like him. If I got something to get, I know where it's at. I go get it and I get out of there.
Yeah, I can barely walk to the elevator.
But I think maybe you should look back a little bit. 3-4 years ago this was. It was a big thing then. It was going on for some time. And I almost was sure that's what they were going to do.
I can look back and see.
Actually, Courtney Barker gave the presentation on it. She was the one that actually brought it up. I think that's how she started here originally. She was the downtown coordinator, maybe. I can't remember.
Downtown redevelopment planner.
Yeah, I think she was. That's how she originally got started. So it was one of her niches. So anyway, well, thank you for the presentation. So we'll go to petitions and requests from public present. We actually have somebody that stayed. So and next is we'll just go to reports. So we'll go to the school board first. So do you have a nice report for us this week?
I didn't think I was going to have anything, but Mr. Lindman surprised me. he basically passed on what Dr. Blackburn had given him. And so it's very interesting. The title of the document is Brevard Schools, Public Schools Cuts Evaluations to Grow Time for Learning. And this is what he has to say. Superintendent Desmond Blackburn promised to free more time and resources for teaching and learning in Brevard Public Schools. Today, he and associations representing BPS, teachers and administrators, announced changes that should help with that. First, there's 4 different areas. First, the school district will eliminate professional growth plans, commonly known as PGPs, in the next school year. Many educators found the extensive PGPs to be time-consuming and sometimes confusing. And these are quotes from Dr. Blackburn. I want our babies to be kept emotionally and physically safe. I want our babies to exceed learning goals, and I want caregivers of our babies to have awesome relationship with this school district, said Dr. Blackburn. Those things are impossible if our educators are too busy with bunches of compliance documents. The second item, BPS will cut in half the required minimum classroom observations for all instructional personnel. This will give principals the flexibility to focus more of their time in the classroom that need it. And then third, BPS is changing its approach to new teachers and experienced teachers who happen to be new to Brevard. They will still get the required minimum observations during the first year, but those observations will be reduced by half after 1 year of experience. And finally, for administrators, BPS will end the deliberate practice portion of their evaluations, a form akin to the teacher's PGP. These changes are a result of a collaboration between BPS leaders and 2 key organizations, and those 2 organizations are the Brevard Federation of Teachers and the Brevard Association of School Administrators. And Dr. Blackburn said, I am thankful for those organizations collaborating with him. I'm especially honored to work for the school board members who get it. And there's a video in the bottom of the site. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet because when I rushed in this afternoon, I quickly just printed the report. But I think the teachers will be very, very happy about what he just said because they've been assessing, and more assessing. And it's eating up teaching time. So I was very happy when I read it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we'll go to city staff. Is there anything you'd like to report?
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, city attorney.
I don't have anything further. Although one comment that you all are probably well aware of is that April 23rd is the transition date for the new code, and the new code will go live on April 24th. Is that right?
Correct. Actually, MuniCode will be posting the PDF versions of our new land development regulations this Friday afternoon, but technically they become effective on Sunday. So starting Monday, any new applications that we receive for land development will fall under those new regulations, and we appreciate all your help that you all were through that process. And get ready because we're starting the EAR process here soon, so we will be bringing many more things to you.
Thank you.
Joy. All right, so with that, is it possible to at least get a CD of the new code? Because I know that you gave us printed versions, and I know that there's been some changes. I think minor changes, right? And that was just what came before us.
Correct. But yeah, I'd be glad to
just get a CD.
Yep.
And,
is it all right if we just distribute it with your next agenda packet?
I mean, that's your call. So
Okay. If not, we can mail them to you beforehand.
I don't think it's a pressing issue.
I didn't figure.
So, all right. Well, thank you. All right. So let's see, Member Ritchie.
Do you have anything on the convention center that they proposed on 405 and US 1? It was going to be a hotel. They came before us last year.
Oh.
Anything new on that?
I don't have an update as far, we haven't received anything. I have received a couple calls from the applicant for that request, just doing some, I think, more or less market research on asking questions about the other hotel that's going in at 95 and 50. So everything he's told me, they're still moving forward, but we don't have any formal submittals yet.
The one up on 95, that's a Marriott? Is that what?
I think it's a subsidiary of Marriott, but yeah.
The residence owners? Okay.
That'd be nice.
Okay. Secretary Chambers,
Nothing.
Member Bobick.
No, just a wonderful, delightful visit.
All right. Well, thank you. And I have nothing, so we're adjourned.